Okay, hello. Today I'm going to be presenting my crisis management planning table. And I'm going to present it as if I was presenting it to the faculty and staff as the assignment defines. And so I'm going to assume that there's a visual up on a screen or handouts that they've been emailed prior to or printed that they can reference as I'm working through this. But I would start by welcome everybody. Today we're going to be covering our crisis management planning here for our campus. And I've got 15 minutes planned for this. We've got 5 different types of emergencies. So I'm going to give about 3 minutes per each one, get you guys out of here in 5 minutes. I'm going to give a little bit more time to active shooter as it deserves. And so, yeah, but first thing we're going to do is start with a fire. So in the event of a fire, what we would want to do is go back to our planning, evacuate the building using all the designated routes that have been posted on the evacuation maps that are found throughout the campus and in your classrooms. We want to account for all students using the attendance sheets that are in your emergency folders. At least that's how we do it at our campus. We have emergency folders that are have attendance sheets in there and index cards where we can indicate which students are missing, which students were just absent that day. But we'll want to account for all students and staff members in each one of the designated areas. And we would have admin checking in with each one of those areas, because if it's a big campus, we might have multiple places, and then radioing those communications between. And then ultimately, we would wait for the fire department for the clearance to return into the building. How I would communicate between all staff members, and the way I broke down the communication is how am I going to communicate with staff members, with students, and with parents as well. And so internally, of course, the fire alarm would go off, and then radio communication among administrators would go. If we needed to use the intercom to give information, the intercom should be working at that point in time, but the response from the fire alarm should be the main indicator that, hey, now it's time to evacuate the building because we have a fire. Externally, parents I would be notifying through the district messaging system after we have ensured that all students are safe. Hey, today we conducted a drill, or today there was a real fire, all students are safe. We want to make sure that we're, safety's at top of mind when we want to keep your kids safe. And then with those emergency responders, I would be communicating with them through 911, or hopefully there is some sort of communication system that is already linked to the fire alarm going off. What could we have done before this crisis to help prevent it? Obviously, we're going to be doing regular fire drills. I know that there are parameters of how many drills you have to run per year that are set by the state. We would want to make sure that we're adhering to at least those, and hopefully, if time permits, that we can do more than that. But practice making perfect. We want to do those regular fire drills. We want to train all of our staff on the literature that needs to be included in the classroom, make sure that we have all of our route maps up, make sure that the staff knows how to fill out their attendance forms within the folders. And then we would do regular fire extinguisher inspections, our SROs and safety protocols that we would go through to make sure that they're checking all those, and then have those clear evacuation maps posted in the hallways and in every single classroom so that they know we leave the classroom and we go this way down the hallway and this is where we stage. Other individuals or groups that we would want to communicate with to play a role in this would be, of course, the fire department, EMS, district admin, letting them know we're running a drill or this wasn't a drill, and then the law enforcement if needed. So moving on to if we have an intruder on campus. So what we would want to do is we would want to refer to our SRP, our standard response protocol that's posted in every single classroom, also out in the hallway. And what we would do is implement a secure or lockdown depending on the threat levels. And so oftentimes, if we have a intruder that's around the campus, outside of the building, and we know that they're not in, law enforcement has called it in, hey, we're chasing someone around the school, we would go into a secure at that point, where business would be as usual inside the building. We just want to make sure that we're not utilizing any exterior doors. Those people that are by those exterior doors are checking to make sure that they're locked and everyone is accounted for. And the business as usual, of course, if the intruder is on the campus, we would go into a lockdown, which is locks, lights, out of sight, get the kids away from the door, lock it, turn your lights off. We would want to secure the entrances and monitor the situation until law enforcement resolves the incident. Internally, how we would announce this is we would announce either the secure or the lockdown using our SRP terminology. So secure, get kids out of the hallway, keep them in your classroom, business as usual in the classroom, lockdown, locks, lights, out of sight. At our particular campus that I'm working at right now, we actually have coded, color-coded alarms that go off in each classroom and in the hallway, where red means a lockdown, yellow means secure, and those keys are posted so that we all know what's happening. But we would follow up communication through radio or secured staff messaging. We have a messaging app that our campus uses, and then obviously administration radio, just keeping everybody up to date. And then we would avoid detailed intercom updates just in case that intruder makes it onto campus. Externally, we would want to communicate with those parents through our district communication system after everything has been resolved. If it's an outside person that we're trying to keep out from our building, we would want to coordinate with law enforcement to make sure that they have apprehended that individual and that we can go ahead and let parents come in if they need to pick up their kids. We can open our exterior doors for that time. How we would go ahead of this is we would want to have visitor management procedures. We would want to lock all of our exterior doors, have the staff training, and have those regular safety drills of how we might do a secure or a lockdown, locks, lights, out of sight. We would also want to make sure that that standard response protocol is posted in every single classroom so that we know the terminology that we're working with. Who we're communicating with outside is, of course, law enforcement, other district administration, school resource officers, emergency management protocol or personnel, and then we would want to move students and staff to designated shelter areas if needed, okay? And so the biggest thing here is differentiating between if the threat is outside the building or inside the building. And if it's outside, we want to make sure that law enforcement has apprehended that individual. Moving on to tornadoes. We want to, in the response of having a tornado, we want to move staff and students to those designated shelter areas. So there have been areas that have been designated within our campus that this place is safe for students to house in the case of a strong winds or really bad weather. We want to move away from the windows until that warning expires. Internally, this is okay for intercom, assuming that we still have intercom if the wind hasn't knocked it out. But we would want to make that announcement, hey, it's time for us we're having a tornado drill, or we're actual threat, you need to move into the designated areas. We would use our weather alert systems, our radios between staff members, and make sure that staff runners are there if necessary that are bringing information if we have a power outage, and of course our radios would still work. Externally, we would want to let the parents know when the threat has passed, hey, all of your students are safe, or this is what we're doing to clean up this area. What we would do beforehand is just severe weather drills, just the same way as fire drills. Identify those shelter locations with maps so that everyone knows where to go if the opportunity presents itself. And then we would also want to check weather monitoring systems. So keeping the weather app that can tell you when weather's approaching, that we would get alerts before the weather even happened, that we wouldn't be surprised by it. Speaking of that, who we would coordinate with is the National Weather Service, emergency management officials, and other district administrations and first responders so that we can hopefully be ahead of the weather before it comes. Okay, that moves us to the big one, is the shooter on campus. And I'm a firm believer, so we, in my years of experience prior, we do a lot of fire drills, and I would love to see the statistics on how many schools have actually succumb to a fire versus an active shooter. I know those get a lot of headlines, and so it's probably just media that pushes that, but I personally feel like we need to be practicing lockdown drills for active shooters more often than fire drills, because these schools are built out of very little flammable products and materials, but active shooters, that's on the forefront of today's education. So what we want to do is implement a lockdown immediately. Follow that district emergency protocol. Have an announcement over locks, lights, out of sight, and law enforcement will be coming in. We want to prioritize that this is a life and death situation. We don't want to cause any panic, but hey, this is not a drill. Locks, lights, out of sight. get the kids away from the windows, get them away from the door, lock the door. The way that it was presented to me is an active shooter on average has 3 minutes inside of a campus. And so they are not going to waste their time on a locked door unless they've picked a target. And so locked doors is just that real quick check. Oh, I can't get in there, I'm gonna move on. And so let's get the locks, lights, out of sight done. Now, how we would communicate this internally after we've done the immediate lockdown announcement using those predetermined language, locks, lights, out of sight, or they have the flashing red on the intercoms that tell about the emergency. It has been very clear that we do not announce you out of that drill. And the why is if the active shooter has someone to gunpoint that is on the phone saying, hey, everyone, it's okay to come out right now. It's life or death for them. They're saying anything. It is specifically what gets you out of a lockdown drill is an SRO or a police officer who has the key, because you also don't come to the door. Same reason. If you have someone on gunpoint who's knocking saying, hey, this is the principal, let me in, it is going to be a law enforcement officer who has a key that unlocks that door, steps inside and says, hey, the threat is out. Otherwise, we are not moving until that exact thing happens. Further communication would be through radios internally, only the people that have them. Of course, if the radio gets stolen, those things might be compromised. So we're not, again, releasing anybody unless that law enforcement officer comes with a key. We would want to avoid those frequent intercom updates that can be provided because we don't know who is providing them, or rather the influence for which they are providing them. Externally, from a district level, when we would want to inform the parents of what's happening. In a lockdown drill, we want to create the least amount of panic as possible. We obviously don't want parents to come up to the school if there's an active shooter there. And so we would want to inform the parents after everything has been resolved. We're obviously coordinating with law enforcement to get them into the building and neutralize the threat however they see fit. How we can get ahead of this is making sure that every exterior door is locked and not propped open under any circumstance. So I know this has been really big within Texas. TEA is doing regular audits of schools to make sure that exterior doors are being well monitored and not propped. They'll even ding you if you have something near the door that could be used to prop it open. Everybody needs to have an ID and everybody needs to be doing it. We need to not have any exterior doors propped open. So if we are diligent to make sure that our staff members and students aren't approaching exterior doors and letting people in or propping them open because you want to go do something real quick. No, just use your ID, be diligent to make sure that those exterior doors are locked. And then we would want to be doing active and frequent drills where locks, lights, out of sights, we know exactly what that is. We practice like we play. So if we are responding to a classroom and we come by and there's a lot of giggling and you can see kids that are still out there, or God forbid a teacher still teaching because they know it's just a drill, just making sure that we're communicating, hey, we have to practice like we play. And so we want to make sure that everybody's doing the standard response protocol drills the same way that we would in an active shooter opportunity. Staff preparedness and training, making sure that they know that this is serious and that we move the students to a correct location inside the classroom. External people that we would be coordinating with to make sure that this crisis is resolved would be law enforcement, SWAT if it came to it, EMS if we needed anybody to be treated, and then district administration, higher level, to make sure that they know when we initiate a lockdown at our school, it automatically updates the the district support center and all the campuses. Really, every admin is going to know if one campus goes on a lockdown. We might also be meeting with mental health teams to reinforce or reunification terms and teams for if we need to reunify kids with their parents or just work through with a student the trauma that is an active shooter afterwards. Okay, and then finally it comes up to loss of electricity. So this can be weather related, or we've had a situation before where someone was working on the power lines outside of the school, accidentally cut it, school lost power. So what we want to do is assess the extent of the outage, working with the local electric company to see how long this outage is going to be. Is it a particularly hot day where the AC is going to be affected? Do we need to early release these students? But we want to maintain supervision, actively backup systems if they're available. If we have some sort of backup generators, every campus that I've worked on has some sort of backup generator that's running very low wattage things like hallway lights, floodlights. We can continue for the most part education as long as there isn't a prolonged outage, or like I said, it becomes a temperature issue where the kids are going to get too hot or too cold inside the building, and then determine whether sheltering or dismissal is necessary from there. Internally, how we would communicate this is obviously if we've lost power, our intercom system isn't working anymore. So we're going to make sure that we're using internal radios to communicate, cell phones if need be, getting that communication out, using our messaging software that we have with the actual school. That's going to be using your cell phone. And then externally notifying these parents if they need to come pick up their kids. We're doing early release because we don't have power anymore. And then just coordinating with transportation to get buses that can pull kids. And in that emergency response, we just want to make sure that we're communicating clearly with those parents and what they need to do. How we can prevent this is making sure that our backup power systems are all functional and working. Emergency lighting, cutting things off and seeing what comes in. Communication redundancies, just making sure that we know, hey, everyone has the messaging app downloaded, right? Because if the power goes out and we can't make an announcement, we got to be able to tell the staff everything, and so make sure that messaging is working. And then making sure that we have contingency plans in place. This is the threshold. If the power's out for this amount of time, we're doing early release. If it happens at this time of day, we're doing early release. Things like that. And then finally, the people that we'd be communicating with would be the utility companies to see how long the outage is going to work, district maintenance to see if it's something that's on the campuses end that can be fixed, district admin, transportation department if we need to get kids home, and then also those emergency management officials, and making sure that the parents know what they need to do. So that wraps everything up. Again, it's all going to come down to planning. We got to make sure that we have a plan in place and that we practice like we play, so that when it comes down to these actual emergencies, we know what to do and no one is confused, and we can cut down on the panic and chaos as much as possible. Thank you so much.